Thank you for joining us today. So Niall, I'm going to jump straight into it and start with you. Before we talk about Gateway, I'd just like to talk a little bit about your route into filmmaking. You've kind of got a strong assistant directing career. I think you were put forward as an assistant or trainee assistant director back on Strength and Honor, I want to say. And you've worked on the ranks of a lot of good films like Michael Inside and Here Are the Young Men the last number of years. But what initially made you want to make films?
For me, it was my childhood, really. Saturday nights were the night we'd watch the latest VHS releases, me and my mom and my brother and my sister. So that kind of, those moments, you know, well, I guess we all have them, where you think back to those times in your youth when you experienced movies for the first time, like Indiana Jones and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And, you know, it was magic. And then you kind of, as you get older, then you know, for me anyway, I wanted to create that for someone else if possible. You know, I wanted to create moments where people would watch a movie I made and it would resonate with them and maybe influence them to go on.
And did you always want to be a director from that point, or like did you fall into like the film industry and be a part of that and then realize you could be a director and a good one at that?
Thank you. I always wanted to direct. It was always, I mean, myself and my friends, Shane and Andrew and Dan, and Finbar, we started out with like a VHS and one prop. We had a fake hand, and we'd make movies out in the park on VHS, and I'd edit them on 2 video machines. So yeah, that from about the age of 16, we were making, you know, everybody does bad home videos. I still have the VHS upstairs somewhere. I put it on Blu-ray one day. So directing and writing were always and will always be the first, my first love, so to speak, first thing I want to do.
Brilliant. And like you've worked on you've had a number of shorts over the years, including the IFTA nominated Animal and Torn, of course. But I suppose what I'm curious about is, this is your first feature. What made you want to make this as your debut feature, this particular story?
Well, Gateway came about because another idea I had fell through. I think I had just finished Rig 45 as a first AD, and I had some money, and my buddy Ian Debris, who's in Gateway, he's been pushing me for a long time to make a feature, and I had written a script that a very well-known Scottish actor had read, and he had you know, he wanted to do it. Now, unfortunately, it didn't work out, but I'd gotten a few of the bits in place, location and some of the crew, and so I just decided to change tack and write something else. So I wrote Gateway, I think, in about 2 months, and we shot it then in I started writing it in February and we shot it in May. So it was really a kind of now or never type moment, you know, because I had the money. It's not often you have money, so.
It isn't. And I've seen the film brilliantly described as love-hate meets The Shining.
Yeah.
Which is an absolute hell of an elevator pitch. That being said, what I really like is it's the kind of horror that's about something else and about something real. It's not genre for genre's sake. Like, it's about loss and grief and regret. Yeah. And I really like that. We've been talking recently with people about other horror films like You Are Not My Mother by Kate Dolan, and we had Richard Waters on about Bring Out the Fear, and they're both similarly about something else. Like You Are Not My Mother is about kind of mental illness and a child dealing with parents' mental illness. Bring Out the Fear is about a kind of toxic relationship and all that. And I love the elements you have in this that are kind of a bit of social commentary as well, but that kind of thing of loss and grief coming through. So I'm just curious, where did the idea come from in the first place, Niall?
For the entire story, or just that element?
The entire story, I suppose, and how you juxtapose the two, but that element in particular I found very strong.
Well, the idea for the entire story was influenced in part by a friend of mine who's a member of the Gardaí, and he told me about certain things that were happening in and around Ireland with grow houses and grow operations, and how they utilize empty and abandoned houses and they rent them and they set up these operations. So that seemed like a good avenue to get into a different situation, i.e. the abandoned house type vibe. And what I loved about that was the fact that these operations can be set up in the most unassuming of places, i.e. they could be in your neighbor's house, you know what I mean? So I like that, the fact that we weren't going into the middle of nowhere, we were staying right in the heart of suburbia and having this horrendous thing happen. The main, like for me, Gateways, as you said correctly, it's about loss. So the main core of the story is Timmy / Mike's journey and his dealing with loss. And I think it's something, unfortunately, we all experience in life. And it's no matter, I kind of saw it as no matter what you do, you know, if you're working in a regular job or if you're doing what Timmy's character Mike does, you're still a human being and you still have to process that loss. And the characters within Gateway, they do something that's illegal, but they're not necessarily bad people. You know, they may do things that are part and parcel of the world they exist in, i.e. the drugs business, but they're not bad in the sense of wanting to just go out and hurt people indiscriminately. So yeah, Timmy's character Mike being a human being, the loss that he's suffering, it's the same as we, you know, like any of us really. And it just something that was in my mind at the time that I wanted to explore.
Very good. And like it certainly gives it like a real gravitas like to the proceedings, and it meshes so well between the crime elements and the supernatural elements as well. Now, one of the things I want to ask about is, you mentioned you wrote this in February and it was done by May. What was your writing process like on this? Did you just like knock it out, or was there much redrafting? Or
well, with Gateway, like with many of the stories I write, my process is generally the same. I.e., I'll have the idea and I'll sit down with either Kev or Timmy and I'll tell them the idea. And as I'm talking about the idea, I'll add a layer. You know what I mean? I'll add in another layer that I had only just thought of in that moment. So with Gateway, I wrote an initial draft, which was about 62 pages. And then I just, it wasn't, put it this way, it was the least structured script I've ever written. It was 60 pages, and then I would add layers. And thankfully, you know, I hope, I like to think it worked, that narratively it works. But in terms of the writing process, it definitely wasn't the classic approach of, you know, you work out your 3 acts and you've got your arcs. And yeah, I would have started with a certain part of the story, which would be let's say the overall, the gang in the house. And then I would have gone back and I would have added in the more emotional core, i.e. Mike's journey in the story. And then as that developed, you know, I realized that that's what the story is about. Everything that happens is a result of their decisions. What Mike's dealing with is with him from the start through to the end, and it's that journey for him.
Fantastic. So just a quick thing about some of the influences. Like we mentioned Love, Hate, and The Shining, but it has a great kind of Ben Wheatley vibe to me. Like it resonated with me like Kill List. And I'm sure Jer might have some other influences visually. We come to it a bit, but were there any particular things that influenced you in the writing of it and how you felt you were going to go and execute?
Well, big influence in terms of the performance was Clint Eastwood. And that was to all the cast, that was my kind of main note, was that, you know, watch Clint Eastwood in his movies. He does very little when he's, you know what I mean? He even his face rarely changes all that much. And I wanted a very realistic atmosphere. I wanted it to feel very real and very grounded. And I wanted moments of high anxiety or moments of distress to be more pronounced. And I think you do that by grounding everything else. You know what I mean? We don't, like we're talking here, my face isn't changing all that much. Do you know what I mean? And I tend to, at times, when certain performances, you know, the actor might put too much into reactions that we wouldn't do in real life. So that was a big part, and that was a big influence. And then from the stylistic standpoint, i.e. the filmmaking, you're spot on with the Ben Wheatley, massive influence on the film, and Shane Meadows, especially Dead Man's Shoes, because again that has that very grounded. Like if I was pitching it to someone in England, I'd say Dead Man's Shoes meets The Shining. You know what I mean?
And actually, it's interesting you mentioned Shane Meadows, because I know when he was kind of starting off, he did exactly that, VHS with mates at the weekend, out the back, knocked out a load of bad films, and that's how you get to the good ones.
There you go.
So I'm going to turn to your cast now in a second, Niall, but you mentioned like Clint Eastwood as an influence there, but they're all very authentic and convincing. And look, I'm a little bit biased, but it's great to see so many Cork faces on screen. What was the casting process like? I know some of them have worked with you previously.
Honestly, it was brilliant, because I mean, as I was writing it, I knew who I wanted for all of it, and it was great, because like I'd write it and then I'd go, you know, speak to Rosie or I'd speak to Kevin, and they were, you know, they were gracious enough to do it. I think for Rosie, you know, I was nervous with that conversation because, you know, it's a very how to put it, the character that Rosie portrays it's central to the story, because it creates so much of the if you want to call it the supernatural / unsettling aspect of it. And I really wanted Rosie to do it, and she, you know, thankfully Rosie read the script and she trusted me, and I mean, I'm just, how to put it, so grateful to all the cast, because they were who I wanted, and they gave me their time and they agreed to do it, so it was a joy. The casting process and the on-set process was brilliant.
Well, let's turn to your cast now, see if they've had the same experience or disagree. I'm sure they didn't.
Hey, I didn't make it easy. I'm not going to lie. Timmy will tell you that.
Let's start with you, Timmy. Thanks for joining us. I first saw you in My Brothers back in, I think, 2010, when Will Collins, he's now writing for Cartoon Saloon and Song of the Sea and all that. That was a kind of semi-autobiographical piece you did, and you were terrific in that. And since then, you've been in things like On Klondike, for Bulg, Vikings, and of course, like Niall's Animal and stuff. What attracted you to working on something like Gateway with him?
So I'd worked with Niall since that very first film. Niall was maybe not a trainee AD, but he was definitely in the AD ranks, and got to know him at that, and we hit off a friendship and then a kind of a working friendship relationship from that, and we started to make films together, and there was a kind of a hunger to make things together. And because we were from Cork, we used to be knocking around fucking coffee roasters every second day, kind of looking at each other going like, we're here, we want to do this, but like, what are we doing, and you get that kind of, sometimes as an actor, you want to work so bad, but you just can't put yourself, or you can't get the jobs there. So we were kind of like bouncing ideas off, and we made short films along the way. And then Niall was expanding his own confidence, I think, as a writer and as a director, to make a feature. And I would have been behind that, seeing the shorts that he'd made and wanting to be part of that. And I remember that period when you wrote this, you were like, I think you had about 3 scripts you were writing at the same time, and he was like powering out these scripts like in quick time, like, so and he'd be, just, I'd read them and feedback or whatever, and then it came to this other film. He was talking about this really good idea about this particular location where everything happens in this one house, and it's a solid idea. That script still lives somewhere, I think. And then it quickly happened that this was the thing we were making together. This was the feature film, and all the people who've been involved with Niall and his films from early on, it was like gathering the family in and putting kind of everything on the line for this 12 days, 2 weeks, in terms of your friendship and your working, your wants as a creative, and it was really intense. But you look at the film again and you're like, you see the value in putting yourself on the line, I guess. You're creatively
brilliant said. It certainly worked out. I'll come back and talk a little bit about Mike with you in a second. Kevin, if I could come to you next as well. I'm sure some people will know you as Not Donal, from Bridget Neyman and so forth, and again from like Animal and things. Obviously you've worked with Niall before. How did you find when the script came your way, and was there ever any chance of you not being in this?
No, I don't think so. It came straight away. As Timmy was saying, Niall never comes to you with 1, he comes to you with 2 or 3. And but this is the one that he returned to again and again with me, and I think he had me in mind as well. He did. He just said so right from the start. I'd pretty much do anything Niall asked me to do. I've known him a very long time. I've done. I've murdered and brutalized a lot of people on film for him. Seems to be a common theme. So I would. And working with Timmy. I've worked with Timmy before, so yeah, I was never going to say no. It was and a feature. My God. I was never going to say no.
Niall, we're going to have to get you to write something cuddly and nice for Kevin. Like, he's a kitten in a Wellington in real life, and always seems to brutalize people.
Well, no, Kevin, like, in fairness, like, we did explore his sensitive side with a short film we did called Trust, which I think, it was a good chance for Kev to try something a bit different, because he had, like, in a couple of my shorts, well, Animal predominantly, mainly Animal Inc. Like the characters he portrayed were nastier, but I think with Trust he had he had a good chance to show his softer side. And even with Gateway, like the character Joe, the Joe character, I mean, we won't go into how he develops over the course of the story, but again, there's a human aspect to it that I think that Kevin brings very well to it. And there's
I think there's a vulnerability to Joe, I would say.
Yeah. Like all of them.
Yeah, all of them, exactly. And we'll come back to that a little bit when we get more into the characters, but you're dead right. Like, as you said earlier on, they're not bad people, they just do bad things. And Rosie, for yourself, if I'm not mistaken, you hadn't worked with Niall before, had you?
I had in the very first kind of solid short I made, he was the AD on that, so we would have known each other from then.
Oh, very, very good. Okay, so like obviously he makes a great impression on people. But so he mentioned that he had sent you the script and was kind of delighted you'd said yes to it. What attracted you to the script, and particularly the role? We can't spoil too much, but the role of the woman.
Well, I guess it was an opportunity to work with Niall. I think Niall's drive is kind of contagious. His enthusiasm and his passion kind of, contagious. And I knew Timmy was involved. So I have great respect for Timmy as an actor and as a person as well, I suppose. He's the sort of person that you meet out at, shows and things, and he's always a good head to have an old chinwag with. So I was like, yeah, Timmy's kind of, the protagonist. I thought, well, it's going to be strong. Because I did have my doubts about that particular scene that we're not going to mention. When I read it, I thought maybe I was like, is this a comedy? It's not a comedy. And so I did have my reservations, I suppose, but I just chose to trust and go with it. Yeah.
Fab. Well, that scene we're not going to talk about. You're incredibly, incredibly effective in that. So well done.
It's a superb performance. Like
really
the menace that, like even just from Rosie's facial expression, when she's standing in one of the rooms and she's just looking at Lawrence as he walks past, and it's just, it captures the moment so well. And it just, I was so happy that herself and John were willing to be involved.
Well, before I'm bringing Jer now, and we're going to talk about some of the crew you had on that. But I just want to talk about the rest of the cast. You've some other, as well as these brilliant actors, some other terrific names there, like Daffyd Flynn, who people would know from Michael Inside, which you worked on. Lawrence Ubong Williams, who I don't know, but is absolutely splendid in this as well as Eddie. One of my favorites, Jimmy Smallhorn. Again, quietly terrifying as Cyril. And Ryan McParlin, formerly of this parish, but now off on the Halo TV series for Paramount Plus. It's a great cast. How did you get the rest of them all together?
Well, and
I've left out a good few people as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, like to be honest with you, the cast, most of whom I'd worked with before, like Fiona Hardy and Lawrence, I hadn't worked with before, but Timmy came to me early on in the casting process, and he was like, "Look, I know these two actors, and I think they'd be great." And I trust Timmy, and I spoke to both Lawrence and Fiona, and they were perfect. You know what I mean? They were really strong, and they brought so much to it. And that was the only the only unknown factor in terms of casting. Like Ryan, I'd worked with before, and from the moment I saw him on Peter McCarthy's Hunter's Fall, if I'm not mistaken, I hope haven't got the name wrong, but Ryan's superb. Ryan's just he's just a superb actor, and he brings such a presence to everything he does. And so when I hadn't cast that role, and I was trying to figure out who to get, and Ryan was in my head, and I talked to Stephanie Kavanagh, the makeup artist, because I was saying I'm trying to figure out who to get for Tex, and Stephanie had just done a music video with Ryan, and she said, "What about Ryan McParlin?" And I was like, I was just thinking of him. So I got in touch with Ryan, and he read the scene, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." And I was so delighted, because he brings so much menace to his performance. Jimmy, I knew through a friend of mine again, Ian Debris, and Ian actually said, "Why don't you give Jimmy a shout and see if he can do it?" So again, got on to Jimmy. He read the scene. He was, really gracious, and came down and did it. And he was like, again, a brilliant actor. Just on point every time. Because we had to do it a lot because of light that day. We had to kind of reshoot certain shots because the light kept changing. But he was patient and gracious, and his performance was excellent. George Hanover, the same. Like George, she was in The Randomer. Again, I wanted George for the role because she's strong, and I think playing the character she plays as Ellen, and she's the kind of the ex of Joe's character. She'd have to have that strength to be able to deal with someone like him. So I was delighted to get George. I mean, everybody, Aidan O'Hare, God, who am I forgetting? Like, yeah, a Dav Flynn. I mean, Dav. Who doesn't like Dav? Dav was magnificent, Michael inside, and I was lucky enough to work with him on that, and we're good friends. And the second I wrote the scene, not even when I wrote the scene, I just knew I wanted Dav to play it. And again, Dav was gracious enough to do it. I was very lucky. Very lucky.
And like, in addition to your great cast we talked about there, you've a great crew behind the scenes as well. And I'm going to come to one of them now. We've got Ger Murphy, who's your DOP. Ger, you'd worked with Niall on shorts before as well, and you've worked in camera departments on like things like The Hole in the Ground and Fair Bulg as well, just to name a few. What made you want to work on Gateway?
I guess, as Niall was saying earlier on as well, the really crucial thing is someone said to us, we have to make a feature. I think we used to love going and making shorts and everything else like that, and I love to make shorts again in the future. But it was that one thing where someone just came up to me. It was actually on Michael Inside. DP came up to me and he just said, just get something made. And it was a few months later, Niall came up to me and a scenario came where he had a couple of scripts. It was, as Timmy was mentioning, it was actually an initial script he shot location. But that fell through for a few different reasons. But in a way, I'm glad, because this other script came in and it felt it brought energy to that space, as opposed to the other one was more enclosing in that space. So from that point, we said, we'll do whatever you have to do to get it done. So.
Brilliant. And listen, I'll come back to you shortly, Jerome. We'll talk a little bit of some of the really cool aesthetic choices you made with the camera. But Niall, tell me about the rest of the crew. How did you get them together? Now, I know you have a really good production designer and editor called Niall Owens on there as well. But outside of that, how did you get everyone else involved?
God, so I'd worked with Niall Craven, the sound recordist. I'd worked with him before in a TV series called Assassins. Really good guy. Got on with him really well. And I basically just started ringing all the people I liked who I'd worked with. Stephanie Kavanagh, brilliant makeup artist. Lynn Williams, who I worked with on a couple of Tile Media or Tile Films TV shows. It was going to people I knew who I'd worked with, who were professional, talented, and and that I knew could bring something to it. And I was lucky enough that they said yes. I mean, I'm sitting here right now because of the cast and the crew. I mean, let's be honest. I don't make a movie on my own. You know what I mean? I'm just one person, and it takes a great cast and a great crew to get a movie made. And I owe that to them. And my priority with this film is to do the best that I can with it for them. All of them: Stuart McGrainer, Cian Casey, Aaron Tanzan, Brad Stock, Benjamin Walsh. They were our trainees. They came in straight out of college, and they were brilliant. Brendan Condren came down and did stunts. Brought Orla. I can't remember Orla Doherty. Oh God, I can't remember Orla's last name. Sorry, but yeah,
you're doing great.
Just so many great people. Kieran Fitzgerald helped us out. But yeah, just good people, really talented, good people.
Porrick as well on this note.
Porrick English, can't forget Porrick English. I almost forgot Porrick. Jesus, he'd kill me. But yeah, just so many good people that brought really great energy. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what you need. And the thing is, I like making movies with my friends, because the movie, yes, the aim is to make a movie, but you're also on a journey, and I want to share that journey with people. Like Porrick English shot my first short, and Kevin Barry's been in every film I've ever made, and Timmy's been. Me and Timmy wrote our first short together, Torn. Ger Murphy, he on Torn all the way through all the other shorts. So it's and
Rosie, who's going to be in everything you make from now on.
Yeah, and look, if I can get the band back together for the next one without getting shouted at, that's exactly what'll happen. Because at the very least, they've earned that opportunity. I owe them that. You know what I mean? Because of their work and their trust, and that means the world to me.
Well, let's talk about the shoot a little bit then. How long did you shoot for in total now?
We did an initial run of 12 days straight. I figured it was, if I was going to ask people to do stuff to work for back end payment, then I needed to shoot it straight through, so that way they could come in, work and leave, and I wouldn't be bringing them backwards and forwards. Now we did have to do a couple of pickups only because we ran out of time in a couple of things. But I think the total at the end was about close to 18 to 20 days total. So they initially 12 days, and then pickups over the course of the next actual 2 years even. We'd come back and get bits that we hadn't been able to get when money allowed. I mean, you know, you're doing something for no money. It's when you get a job and you have some money that you can pay for the next bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to come back to you a little bit about some of the locations you have in as well, which are great. But I'm just going to go back to Timmy for a second about Mike. Timmy, how was the shoot for you? And one of the things I'm interested in is what Niall said there about Clint Eastwood being a reference for you, because Mike is kind of an intense enough character as well. But how was the shoot for you and kind of portraying that character over that period?
Yeah, like intense is a word when I think about the shoot. It in many ways, like because the inner world of Mike is about loss and about grief, and having to kind of carry that. You know, you don't want to kind of switch in some ways, like to switch off from it, you know, even at lunchtime and stuff, or when you're having breaks, because the more you can kind of I could stay in it, the more I felt like I was able to connect to it. And it was mad because the two of the cast were staying in my house, and you know, like you're trying to, even at nighttime, trying to kind of change the headspace to like, okay, we're outside the set now. But it was you know, it was kind of deeply emotional, but without trying to portray anything, which was, and Niall would be constantly making us aware that not to put anything on it, you know, kind of like don't act, just, or even with the lines, you know, just to try and like keep them as neutral as possible. And it's hard because you're kind of stuck in your head for the day trying to connect this emotion, and you're trying to release it, but the character is really trying to suppress it. And
you do a great job on that, because you are Clint Eastwood like in it, but the eyes, I think you can see that kind of, I suppose, like despair and kind of, you know, loss in his eyes a little bit. But again, you can also see that he's got this kind of, you know, strong stony face going on. But like, I think it works very, very well for the character of Mike. Kevin, for you, how was the shoot for you as well? You were in that house for quite a while, I imagine.
Yeah. As Timmy said, it was intense. We managed to stay friends afterwards. And like it was 12 days. You brought it home with you. You brought it back in. The house was cool. I liked the house. The house was creepy as fuck. I like the house. And as for the acting style, the trying to control yourself with again having an intense character with his own struggles. Yeah, it was hard, even down to movement, trying to control movement, trying to be still was hard, but it paid off. It worked. Yeah, you were right, Niall. Okay. But yeah, no, it was intense, but it was fantastic. Got to work with a lot of fantastic people.
Yeah,
experience.
I just got to jump in there, but I think I mentioned the point earlier. It's like when you work with your friends, you know, it's like you put the friendship kind of, and it's way more intense because you take it home with you, because at least when you're working with people that you don't know so well, you can kind of clock on and clock off, you know. But it's the experience, the layers of the experience, and what happens after the film, even when you're done, it's like the reverberance of the experience. It lives, because when you talk to them again, that you're still kind of yeah, it shapes the relationship, I guess.
Yeah, and you've got that intense shared experience as well. Like, it's
exactly, yeah. Which is the beautiful thing that Niall said, is you go on the journey and you share that with people, and that you care about.
Yeah,
exactly.
I wouldn't have made it easy. I didn't make it easy. I mean, I'm not going to lie, and you know, and the only thing I would say is I explained my motivation for why I wanted things to be a certain way. And you know, we had myself and Timmy would have had at least a couple of arguments on set, off set, which is part of the process. Do you know what I mean? But I had to see it happen a certain way for my own confidence as much as anything else. I mean, you know, I see directing as kind of like it's a gut thing, you know, and I need to be able to trust my gut. So therefore, I need to know if my decisions are right or wrong, and I would rather make a decision and it be wrong than not know if my decision would have been right. So with Gateway, I saw it in my head a certain way before I'd even finished the script. I saw it in my head a certain way, right down to the sound design. Like if Aaron, the sound designer, was here, he'd tell you, like when I told him what I wanted to do, he looked at me like I had 4 heads. But I told him that's what it had to be because that's how I saw it in my head. And the performances are the same. And I just had to kind of say, look, sorry, but it's just got to be this way. That's the way I want it. And if it's wrong, it's on me, you know, and I'll accept that all day because I made that decision. You know?
And Rosie, with you on that, what Niall was saying there about decision making, I assume he didn't tell you to act like Clint Eastwood in your performance there. But
I don't know about that, Gary. No, he didn't. So for me, I just had to. I was kind of like I wasn't sure if I was really doing a whole lot, to be honest, because you know, as an actor, you want to emote and you want to speak, and I didn't have any words, and I certainly wasn't, I guess, emoting. It was just
but there's that stillness as well that we were talking about that it definitely embodied, I think, your character to a bit, but like so Niall said he didn't make it easy on everyone. Like, did he have very specific instructions for you on that?
Just, you know, channel your inner evil, you know. So I guess I have some going on.
Well, the thing is, again, it's that I'm always conscious of the bubble that is a movie and that anything can burst it. And I think that would have been a big motivation for the performances for the lads and my telling them not to move as much and cutting a lot. I cut a lot out because I always wanted to maintain that bubble whereby you weren't taken out of the film. And for Rosie's character, the woman, like Rosie might feel like that she wasn't doing that much, but she was doing so much because every time you see her, it reinforces the weirdness that's at play. And John Ryan Howard was the same. Like they did very little, but it's in the doing very little and doing it well that you actually convey so much more because there's an oddness. Do you know what I mean? There's an oddness to that moment where the person.
And again, that must be quite difficult because it is going against an actor's instincts. Yeah. Second, I always think of that scene in Friends where Joey's playing a dead guy and he continuously keeps acting and it's like please stop. But like it is incredibly effective what Rosie has done there, and of course the other character who I won't spoil who they are. Ger, if I can turn to you on the shoot, the film looks really, really terrific, I have to say. And Niall mentioned a few of his influences there. Did you guys talk about anything else, or including like maybe Ben Wheatley and Shane Meadows, that would kind of have influenced the cinematography of the film?
Not so much those people initially. We'd actually made a short film called Ink previously with Kev and Finbar, who's also in this. So we'd kind of explored the shape of the house inside. So from that point of view, we said we can follow those patterns inside with strict framing, etc., and things like that. But then we started looking at more films like Animal Kingdom from the original film in for the look, not so much for the stylization of it, but there's more the feeling we could develop from people in that. So from that, we came forward really with a plan mainly for really strict framing and very movement. Movement came for moments it was needed, not unnecessary movement at any stage whatsoever.
See, that's something I really liked about the film was it's got a very classic kind of horror sensibility, even though you mightn't necessarily realize it's a horror at the start. It has that kind of claustrophobic framing, as you said, and then a few kind of little glides, slow movement as well, I think.
Myself and Ger we set rules at the outset. And I think in setting the rules, we established the parameters in which it's going to get done. And also we kind of cut our cloth to measure in terms of what can we achieve and achieve well, as opposed to trying to stretch ourselves too thin and run the risk of something not quite working. And also a continuity, like we were very conscious of a continuity, not just in performance, but a continuity in picture, a continuity in sound design. That's why there's no
tone as well. Like it's very consistent tonally.
I mean, the whole thing is a canvas, and the whole thing has to line up to fit that one continuity.
Yeah, there's so many things we could do. Like for instance, we were really strict on lens sizes. Okay. We'd only use generally two sizes inside in the house, except if there was an unusual moment. And, you know, you'd have to move furniture, we'd break down a wall if we could, you know, to get the proper lens in situation to capture everyone. There's no cheating of having a zoom and going slightly further out in it, because I hate things like that. They destroy the aesthetic for me, and they take the I know we had lots of great faces. So all I ever kept on thinking myself was, it's just a set of portraits. And then sometimes we group people around with a central character and just use everyone. I was just delighted every time. I remember when Rosie walked in the door, I met her first of all, I think at lunch maybe beforehand. I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And next thing I went back in to light something. And then I saw her coming in when she was prepared for a role. And I was there, oh, brilliant. It was this I know image itself came through the door. So I only had to capture that image itself. There was no massive trickery or anything else like that. It was all on camera, in front of camera, and we just developed that and get it right.
Brilliant. And like you mentioned about the two lenses you used there, could you, just for any budding DOPs or directors who are tuning, could you tell me a little bit about the lens choices and what kind of camera you used for those?
Yeah, well, we actually used two cameras, but that was mainly a technical thing, mainly because we had offered two cameras. We couldn't afford any rental package or anything like that. So one of the cameras we had, which is just an old Blackmagic camera, is very good at shooting outside with plenty of light. And the other camera was a Sony camera, an F5, which is very good at shooting in the dark. So initially I was thinking we had to decide to shoot in one or the other. And then I realized that we had no lighting for inside as well. So we split it up where everything in the exteriors is shot on one camera with the same lens set. It was a Zeiss set of Zeiss lenses we used. And then everything on the interior then was shot with the Sony, because we wanted a slight change of tone once you arrive inside the main location as well. And we felt we could really control that actually in a subtle way without a big jump, just with changing the camera. So we can get a different file coming and then bring that into post.
Oh, fantastic. And like it certainly paid off, because the film looks absolutely brilliant. So I might talk a little bit about the grading in a moment. We've got some good questions coming in here, guys. If you please keep them coming in, I'll get to them at the end. But let's talk about that location now, because as Gerard's mentioning, I've quite a tight location, having to move furniture around. Like where did you find the house in the first place? Because it is absolutely perfect. It's almost nondescript, and there's a line Timmy's character Mike says as he comes in, like, someone could have been here this morning or last year, which I loved actually, because that kind of really set, like, very subtly, like an ominous kind of tone on it. Like, did you like struggle to find a place that was absolutely spot on for it, or were you able to work around what you had?
I would have had I had the location from the previous, so the main location that the story takes place in, I had that already kind of earmarked from the previous script I'd written. So when that story fell through, I still had the location, so I literally just wrote something to fit into this new location. Thankfully, the size of the house, although it's essentially the same size as mine, it just has an extension. It allowed for much more depth. It allowed us for us to get more distance and to create a sense of a slightly bigger scale, almost like a TARDIS type feel, where it looks small-ish on the outside, but inside there feels like there's a lot of depth. Thankfully, the location was very easy. We had it, I won't say where, but because I don't want the people who live there to be harassed or bothered. But yeah, thankfully the location was easy to get. And yeah, we built everything then else around that. We kind of shot chronologically, so we had the luxury of going in and out of it whenever we needed to, which was handy.
It's a great location because it is so like normal to an extent. And obviously Kevin loved it because it was scary as F. But
it had a real 70s vibe.
It does actually.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's very effective in that. But then I suppose the whole idea of there being a gateway kind of there as well is, hence the title, is really, really interesting. But I suppose my question would be back to the cast then again. Like, so Timmy, for you as well, like, was that kind of claustrophobic for you, kind of operating in there like 12 days straight, and you're in an awful lot of it as well? And did that actually help kind of your character a bit, or how did you feel that?
Yeah, like the house, I think it's okay to say, I think like someone had passed away in the house and then it was left as it was, you know. So when we went in to clear the house for the shoot, you know, you were like literally picking up things on the side of the bed.
So someone had died there in real life?
No.
Okay.
Not in real life, but they had, like, it was like, you know,
in the story.
No, like that. The owner of the house, I think, passed away, and then the house was left as it was when they, you know, So there was a kind of a creepiness to even that process of us moving all the stuff out. And it was really musty and dusty, that smell, which definitely created a sense of claustrophobia. And there wasn't a huge amount of natural light that got in there. And yeah, it was really contained, really narrow stairs, really narrow car, up the scene when Joe hangs himself, it's a really tiny landing in a house. So
No spoilers, Timmy.
It's all right, no, we can edit this out in post. That's fine. But that is terrific, and like he's actually brought something brilliant up there, Niall, in that like I don't mean this in a bad way. The film doesn't necessarily do an awful lot new. You put them in very good context, like the kind of haunted house thing. But like, yeah, you've made attic scary for the first time in a long time. And can I just ask, like, was that always the design feature? I won't get into too much, but the ladder coming down, like, because it is a very creepy space.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the sequence with Joe, I'd wanted it to be one continuous shot, but the problem was it was just too long. And I wanted that moment. You see, that's the, without getting into spoilers, that's the transition moment where the story takes that turn, that dusty dawn moment. And so I wanted the audience really wondering what the hell is going on and watching. And then, so yeah, I mean, I wrote a lot of the scenes knowing the geography of the house, which helped a lot. But yeah, I would have loved to have had that play as one shot, but it was just a little bit too long. But that's the way it goes sometimes.
It's a good sequence, and like you're down as doing some of the production design as well. And as we were saying, the house is very, very effective in that. But there's, again, without spoiling anything, there's some great sequences involving some kind of body parts and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
oh geez, I gotta mention Martin Lucy. God, I almost forgot Martin Lucy. Oh, the brilliant Martin, that guy, what an actor. Bloody hell, again, another amazing, like, just each person that I remember. I mean, I hate to say remember, but like, but yeah, every time I think of someone who was connected or in it, you just kind of, all the more you kind of go, geez, I'm so grateful that these folks agreed to do it. But yeah, Martin, he was a trooper. That, put it this way, without going into detail, he gagged when we cut. That's what I'll say. He gagged when we cut. He did.
They look very real, like they might have been appropriated from the English market or something on the day. Or
you are correct.
I thought
you were correct, sir.
You'll know when you see it, folks, if you haven't seen it already. But I think most people will have seen that. So, guys, I'm going to come to Niall a little bit about some of the challenges that might have been faced. But for you guys as actors, was there anything particularly challenging you faced that, like, you learned like to deal with in an interesting way you'd like to share with some kind of upcoming actors, or anything particular about your role you found like a challenge that you were able to address? Timmy, might start with you again, then I'll come to Rosie and Kevin.
I'm going to pass that on to the lads and I'll come back to it.
Kevin, for you, obviously you've worked with Niall quite a bit, so was there any challenges on set, just from an acting perspective, that you'd like to say, oh, maybe thought this would be difficult, like the stillness you were talking about, for example?
That's exactly what I was going to say. The stillness and line delivery. Normally, usually when myself and Niall worked together, there's a little bit of play with lines, the odd word here and there, but we pretty much stuck line by line on the script, delivered in a very relatively flat way as well. So that was it felt like you weren't acting, and some of the time the stillness was very hard, although I think it lent itself to the characters. I think you could see it built tension, and in a good way, visually anyway, in a good way. So those two things were challenging, because in particular the stillness, trying to keep your hands in your pockets, or trying not to move at all, not to move much at all.
Can I come in just for a moment on the stillness as well? Just they're great actors to work with also, because they're actually very physical actors. Everyone who works on it, they have great movement. But I'd always chat to them anyway, and Niall would chat to them. We were setting little stages, either for their face or for their bodies, for them to act within or to use. So when they were still, it was very narrow, but they knew every movement, they did was going to be magnified. So they were able to use those small little movements and moments, really, I think, to bring out some great performances.
Yeah. I mean, and Joe, I mentioned Joe Lyons and Finbar Stanton, who made up the rest of the group. Like those two lads, again, the main core gang element within the story, and you know, Finbar and Joe, like they were again great performers. Like they all nailed it, tough as it was. Sorry, I'll stop there. Sorry.
You're okay. And Niall, just on that as well, like, I mean, I suppose you made quite a few shorts. You've been working on quite a lot of films as well in different capacities. Like, how do you feel that prepared you for kind of making your first feature? Was there anything that came up that you're like, oh, I know to do this because of how I've done
I learned a lot over the years. I've been lucky enough to work with really great people and watch them and work with great producers and work with great directors. And like, yeah, and then like every short I've made, I've produced and directed and written. So like I've been slowly working my way along. And I enjoy producing as well. So when it came to Gateway, I was just taking everything I'd learned so far and then preparing for what I didn't know, which was going to happen. You know, it always happens, and that's how you continue to grow. And
Yeah.
Like Gateway was a challenge. It's not like I cried my first day, got back. I thought I'd messed up. I was actually contemplating sending everyone home, and I rang my mum, and she was in Greece at the time, and she got me to calm down, and she told me, sleep on it, get up the next day and see how you feel. And I did that, got up, and we cracked on, and it was tough. But honestly, I loved it. I loved every minute of it because everyone was so great and so on board. And I know it's easy in these times to say, oh, we're all great pals and everyone's marvelous and blah, blah, blah. But genuinely, like everyone was so great to deal with. And the process, though difficult because I presented a difficult scenario, that's the job. I won't apologize for it. Like I understand how Timmy and Kev and everybody feels. That's the job. That's what I'm there to direct it and write it. And if I mess it up, if my decisions are bad, that's on me. So it was tough, but I think it was good too in a way because it presented a challenge to them, and I think they, if anything, and I'm not going to take credit, I'm not trying to take credit, but like they learn something maybe about themselves that they can carry on out to the next thing. And I've learned a lot about myself. And I think that's part of the journey, and that's what I look forward to in the next one, is just learning something else and being wrong. I am happy to be wrong. But yeah,
that's a brilliant attitude. I've heard a thing before about one of the writers who I think on Mad Men. This very experienced writer came in and had written a scene with this character, and they said no, he wouldn't do that, and he was like, brilliant, I'm wrong. How do I be right? What would that character like? And it was just like they were also refreshed to hear the guy go like, oh great, I love being wrong, tell me how to be right, or what can I do to be right. And it's great.
Yeah, just on that as well there, but like I guess trust the director, and that like as an actor, and particularly on this, it's like you're kind of relying on your instincts, but they're not always right, and someone to be able to just let go of that. And I guess there's a let go of the ego there as well, in terms of you think Niall has got the vision for it, so to trust that. And then the other thing that I think I look back in the film, I think about as something that I learned is like to know the moment in terms of the whole story. You look back in the film as a one piece, like, and how each moment as you're shooting it is telling the story of the house, the different characters, and to be able to contain that, while also be able to be in the moment in the scene, but to know where it fits in the whole story, like, and the whole atmosphere and everything. That's hard, but I guess that's important.
That's great. That's a great piece of advice. Like, have the big picture here, but also focus on like the moment. Like, and Rosie, for you, any particular highlights when you're shooting, or anything you particularly enjoyed or learned from that?
Just the overall, like I think I was filming for like 1 or 2 days, so I was just really excited to be there and to meet some of the other people. And I would say, Niall, your mom as well, fair play to her for pulling you back from the brink. And she put on a good spread for us as well.
I couldn't have made that. I couldn't have made the movie
like,
without my mom. Like, she's on the poster, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my dad, obviously, but my mom was here every day, helping us get food or whatever we needed. Yeah.
I think that's good advice for young filmmakers as well. If you're ever in doubt about yourself and you have a mother, call her.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with being, getting upset or being, like, we're only human. Do you know what I mean? And like, I thank God for my mom, because I could have cancelled the whole thing and just and not done it, because I thought I'd made a mistake. I thought I'd really messed up, and she got me to calm down. No, I'm grateful. I'm very grateful.
Well, brilliant. If you're fair play. That's all good advice. Just get your mom; she'll sort you out.
Talk to your mom.
We just have a few minutes left, guys, but I just want to talk a little bit about post-production, Niall, you edited this as well, I believe, and maybe I can bring Gern as well, because I'm just wondering about the grading and stuff over the kind of cinematography work, because like it looks like really consistent, but it's really, really terrific looking. Can you tell me a bit about that process?
So with the edit, I would have done the assembly. So I would have put together a rough assembly to begin with, which would have been rough. And I'm lucky enough, a friend of mine, John Walters, who cut Black 47, I was able to get John to do a couple of weeks on it, and he really helped with the structure. He really helped put a shape on it. And then it came back to me because John had to move on to other projects. And then I spent about a year then just working on it, you know, cutting and showing it to the lads and getting their feedback and cutting and yeah, constant process, cutting a lot of stuff. You know, Frank Berry was a great help. Like Frank watched the cut and he came back with some advice, and he was just like, you know, cut, get it to a place where you're happy. And then if you need something else, you can do that then, you know what I mean? So that's what I did. I cut out a lot, cut out anything that I wasn't 100% on. You know, but at the same time, I think we used every single shot, not every single take, but every single shot in the movie is in the movie, which I think I'm really happy with. There's no wasted, like there's no scene we shot where we didn't use some of it at the very least, you know. So the editing process was long, but it was good. I needed that time because again, I'd never cut a feature before, and I needed to learn that process, and I needed to take my time, you know, get the input of the lads, yourself, you know, all these things are a big help because, you know, I'm seeing this, and then, you know, you come back with a suggestion or your thoughts, and it goes to that, and then Frank Berry, and then it just gets wider, and you stop looking at it through a single lens, which is your own idea of it, and you open up to possibility. And I think that was a huge help. Deirdre Levins gave me a great piece of advice, which I followed, which I'm very grateful for.
She's a great producer of these kind of films.
She knows her stuff, and many folks, and you know, and the thing is, it's not necessarily like, it's just knowing a story and knowing where something needs that little, you know what I mean? Be the smallest fraction.
Tell me a little bit about the grading process, or like did you have much work to do on the visuals, or was it?
Well, Niall was worried about all of that. I just wanted it to look good, look correct as such, you know, not thing. So initially, actually, I started grading it myself. I had to start learning things. I got all the gear and I borrowed some gear off friends. Luckily enough, I know lots of people in production. So I had a big monitor set up. So during the first lockdown, I taught myself how to color for a while on the film. And from that, we had a rough color cut as such. Look. But then we realized my skills really weren't going to cope with it. So luckily enough, we got in a great colorist called Paul Corrin. And he was in London, and lucky enough we had some Zoom calls and some chats, and I sent him some samples, and we just talked about films for a while. And you were talking about the steadiness of things going through. I think Paul really helped to bring that in. Not in a bad way, he just helped me control things, and we calmed it down, and then we just really started narrowing in on the look and how we could use each element to work, because essentially the film is from dawn to dusk. So we had that natural color change going throughout the day, and it was very good fun to play with that as we went through. And mainly for main looks, I was actually looking at some fashion photographers, to be honest. Interior stuff, I was looking at a lot of Glenn Lushford's work, mainly Prada stuff. I know it sounds weird, but it seemed to suit the tone. And then there's one of my favorite photographers, a guy called Alistair McClellan, who's very famous for photographing in the north of England and things like that, and bringing a sensibility, which is a lot of the exterior stuff then came back to to Alistair McClellan. And then we had just 1 or 2 trips to London is what we could do, really flying. I even had a flat tire on the motorway going to the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there for 1 day's work. That was an experience. But anyway, but then we got there, and Paul was he was one of these great guys you bump into that he just almost calms you down and takes your flush of ideas and just nicely smooths them down. And after the first meeting or two, it went completely trusted him after that, and just worked away from there.
Fab. We've just got time for a few questions there, guys. But just to say, and Niall, the film really does look terrific. We have a question in here from Sean Halpenny, who says, your film premiered at Indie Cork, as did a number of your short films. Firstly, actually, if I can just, sorry, Sean, if I can jump into your question there. How you've got a strong relationship with Indie Cork and stuff. How has that kind of helped you over the years up to this point?
Well, I think, well, no, that's not. I think the first thing I ever made was a documentary of part English called "A Tale of Three Legs," and it premiered at Cork Film Festival, and it would have been Mick Hannigan who picked it. So that's the very first thing I made, and then subsequent to that, every short I've made has been essentially with Mick and Una, either at Cork Film Festival or Indie Cork. And to be honest with you, the finishing Gateway, like there were so many folks from Cork who worked in it. And I guess I didn't, no, I'm not going to say I felt I owed it to them, but I wanted them to see it together in Cork. And I was, obviously delighted to have it premiere at Indie Cork. But it was, to be honest with you, it was kind of cathartic for me too, in a way, because it allowed me to finally get to that part of the journey out of the way, which is building up to the first screening. And then I could concentrate on the next part of the journey. But yeah, it was really good to be able to share with people and hope kind of going into it that they'd be proud at least of the work they've done, and feel that their time had been justifiably used,
And did you guys all get to see it together at Cork? Was it in the Gate Cinema, was it, Noel?
The Gate Cinema, yeah. I think
Yeah.
we were all there, weren't we? Go team. Yeah.
And I'll just take turn to the rest of you. How was it kind of seeing it with like a group of people in the audience, like, and kind of, seeing people respond to it? How was that for you guys? Maybe Timmy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's always weird for me, the premiere, like the kind of all the story of the shoot and the kind of self-consciousness, and how does it actually what's the word I'm looking for? Translate. Does it translate? Like, does the story translate? Does the performance translate? So there's always a kind of a strange, not really looking at it in a kind of objective way as a film. It's more connected to, oh, that was that day, that was the thing. But it was brilliant to see it as a whole in the cinema and see like, oh, this actually stands up in the cinema, as a piece. And the cinema sound of it, like, was fucking really cool.
And Aaron Fay, I gotta mention Aaron, the sound designer, he did superb work. I mean, one of the things along with the performances, the feedback I get is always performances and the sound design and the cinematography. Those three are the things that people always point out as kind of standouts, and Aaron did superb work, even though he was a little skeptical of where it was going, but he went with it and he did superb work.
And Kevin and Rosie, yourselves, how was that for you guys as actors? Because I know, as Timmy was saying, actors find it very difficult sometimes in those scenarios.
Rosie?
Sure. Yeah, I was really taken with the overall look of the film, of course, like, those opening scenes and just the intensity in the eyes of all of Timmy, especially that bed scene. I was like, oh, right, fuck, okay. Excuse me. And sorry. And I suppose for myself, I was weirded out. You kind of sink into your seat. Yeah, that's what generally happens when I'm seeing myself on the screen. You kind of do this. And my partner beside me kind of going kind of thing. But yeah, that was great. It was great. Yeah.
And Kevin, for you?
Terrifying. Going to see yourself, and everybody else, but it's terrifying, but it was amazing. I was so pleased with it. About 20 minutes into it, I said this to Niall already, I was pretty emotional about it. I found myself getting a little emotional watching it, more than a little emotional, actually. And I think that ties into what Timmy said about this. You're matching every scene to your experience on the set as well, so a lot comes back to you. It was with the end result, fantastic. Very, very.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it, guys. We're just running out of time, but just before we go, Niall, are people going to get to see Gateway in a wider context soon, or have you any updates on that?
I hope so. I'll hopefully maybe have some news in the next couple of weeks, but we wait and see. I mean, yeah, I hope so. I hope so. That's all
Very
you
good. Well, if
can do.
you do have any news on him, I hope you will. Please do let us know
I will.
as soon as you can. And we'd be happy to push that out there. Guys, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you all for joining us today and talking about Gateway. I really enjoyed talking to you, and best of luck with everything with the film. Thank you everyone for tuning in as well. We'll be back at 4 p.m. today with the duo behind the film The Last Roll. Then tomorrow we've got Robbie Walters' The Letters with some of the folk behind that. And then Friday we have Deadly Cuts and on Colleen Kuhn. So please do keep an eye on ifta.ie for that. Please, but for now, just thank you again to Niall Owens, Ger Murphy, Timmy Creed, Kevin Barry, and Rosie O'Regan. Thanks a million, guys, and
Thank
well
you.
done.